Hey guys, this is Lucid. Welcome to the national overview for early age Machaka. I have a middle-aged Machaka Blitz that I play. It's a 1v1, so it's a kind of weird match, but you can check that out if you want to see some kind of Machaka play. But this is a Patreon request for early age Machaka, and early age Machaka is the good Machaka. Middle-aged Machaka sucks. Early-age Machaka is freaking cool. I haven't seen this win, like a nation, like I haven't seen that early age Machaka win, but I think they can. I think this is totally a nation that can win the game. Probably the less experienced of games you're in, the easier too for this one in particular. Like, I think Machaka in the hands of a good player versus a lot of not very good players would just like completely dominate them. But yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff in here. So let's do the national overview. I've got a test game pulled up. We'll do, I think, national overview, and then I might try expansion with like with Scales troops, and then we'll talk about. I think, yeah. Then after that, we'll talk about pretender builds. So, because all the Scales builds are kind of the same, but okay. So we have infantry, we have poison archers, we have spider riders, and then we have war lions and elephants. So there's lots of things we can do with all of them, and we'll talk about kind of what they are. Yeah. We have very good access to fire, kind of moderate access to earth, a very good or pretty good access to death, and then nature. Very good access to nature. I think we get nature 3, we get fire 3 as a just whenever you want it, you got it. Wait, which one's nature 3? Your nature 3, your fire 3. Yeah. And then death, I forget which one's the best. I think these ones are. The Clan Witch Doctor, and then you have these guys. No, these guys can get up to 3 if you take the Buddhas. So yeah, anyway, you have 3 in fire, earth, and death, and nature. Wait, now, how high can we get in earth? I'm not totally sure on that. The Buddhas... Okay, they can get to Earth 3. So we can get 3 in all these. Those are very high magic paths. Our priests are average, meaning they mostly suck. Like, we have these holy ones who are actually good. But I mean, they're only holy ones. They're good priest units. They just don't have very high priest paths. The only holy 2 that I think we get is the cap-only Lion King. Like, the Lion Queen is only holy 1. All the mages, most of your mages, your recruit anywhere mages, have no holy paths. And they're not sacred. So they can't take a bless. Your voice of the lion is your only kind of recruit anywhere sacred mage. So they make a very good candidate for being a researcher due to the upkeep. Building standard forts. And then, yeah. So let's talk about the troops first. We have a few things. One is we get pygmies, who have very low strength but are very cheap. They're size 1, so you can densely pack them, and that is actually kind of important because their strength sucks. But with strength of the giants, they actually are significantly better short bowmen, and you can pack a shit ton into each square. So anyway, that's a thing. But yeah, they're mostly you get them because they're cheap. You can mass them easily, and they have very high density. The density can be an issue once evocations come out, but yeah, they also suck at sieging. So you can have an army of pygmies, but they do not do much in terms of sieging. We have the Bird Clan Archer, which basically there's 10 strength, twice as much gold, but that strength gives you 2 more attack damage on the short bow. They also can siege. We have the Machaka Warrior, who just gets a hide shield and a spear. Basically, if you just need to crap out a bunch of people, they take almost no resources. We have these guys, the Hyena Clan Warriors, and they have a javelin. And that javelin actually is pretty damn important. And they have furs. So these guys are actually kind of viable in expansion. Like, any guy you can mass that you can spam out javelins are going to do okay in expansion. Yeah. That spear is also going to get some repel checks. We have the Spider Clan archers, which basically have a short bow. Or no, it's more than a short bow. I think a short bow does what? Was it? Let's check. No, it's 9. So it's a short bow that has weak poison. And the weak poison is actually pretty nice. It's pretty nice. I like it. And most of your units have shields, except your lion warriors. So that would be something to think about. Getting in your bless is like a poison resistance, because they are very likely, if you have swarms of Spider Clan archers, they're going to be getting hit and then therefore getting poisoned. And if you don't want that, then, well, yeah. We also have poison tip spear carriers. These guys, the Spider Clan warriors, I would not consider them for expansion. Too shitty. But if you need to kill things that don't have poison resistance, like that is a lot. That's a strong poison, right? So you just need a couple hits to kill thugs. So, drop in a few of these in a province could potentially kill thugs that are going to rage you. So, yeah. I mean, like, honestly, if you take the shittiest mage you have, like these guys, you give them, like, 5 of these, which are recruit anywhere troops. Yeah. And you put them on guard command, or you put them on hold and attack, and you have this guy cast swarm, and you just have one of these in every province. Good, like, no thug is going to raid you. Fair. Okay, that's not true. Thugs will raid you and potentially kill you, but you have swarm. I mean, like, they could just have poison resistance. But these guys will do pretty good along with a little bit of PD, or maybe like those plus... Well, yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe a lion or two. A couple of these plus a couple lions. But basically, you can... Adding a few of these guys to basic PD will take care of a lot of thugs. Not necessarily going to help with like, flying armies raiding like Calum or something. But if you're worried about thugs, these guys are pretty legit. Okay, so that's the spear-tipped Spider Clan warrior. Then we have the Rhino Clan warrior. And these guys now actually have decent protection. So they have 11 protection plus the shield. And then they have a Machaka spear, which is linked 4, so they're going to be getting lots of repel checks. Or not lots, but some. And they're formation fighters, so you have pretty high density, which actually is nice, because it's going to mean that you're going to have less harass penalty, which means more uses of that Great Shield, or Great Hide Shield. So these, I would say, are definite candidates for expansion. We'll probably be making them. They take a fair amount of resources, but not a ton. We then have the Lion Clan Warrior, which are basically kind of cheaper versions of the Rhino Clan, but they don't have Formation Fighter. And Formation Fighter is a pretty nice perk. Attack density is really important. These guys also do a little bit more damage. They have higher strength, so they're actually decent at sieging. They're 1.5 troops for sieging. So even though they cost a little more, they're definitely worth it in terms of the siege strength. Yeah, the Lion Clan cost even more, but they just take way less resources. The War Lions, very killy, but they have a fair amount of protection, but not much. I mean, they have a fair amount of hit points, but not much protection. They also have really shitty MR, whereas most of your troops have like normal human MR. These you could use as flankers in expansion. If they don't really have heavy combat, like if your main line engages and these guys hit from the side, they are pretty killy. But it's not really much more attack density than the Rhino Clan. But it's like, if you're resource limited, these can kind of buff up your initial expansion parties, because these cost like no resources. So they're definitely worth considering for that role. Anything like, especially in the early game when you're resource limited, very good to have some units like that. Then we have the Spider Riders. And yeah, they have Spider Fangs, which do poison damage, which is actually pretty strong. They have Web Spit, which is kind of legit. They have a Poison Bow. The problem is, Well, I don't know. It's probably fine. If you have these guys, like 5 of these guys actually are kind of expensive, but if you can afford it, 5 of these guys behind PD would deal with a lot of things because some things are going to have to deal with like them spitting webs and poison bows at them and shooting poison bows at them. And then once they've killed the PD with this stuff hitting them, then they have to come in and kill like 4 spider riders. And these guys have a second form, which is just the spider. But the spider fangs, if they hit, which 14 piercing damage is probably going to hit. Anyway, if they hit, then they take 35 poison damage. So even if you have like significant poison resistance, this is going to do a lot of damage. If you have regeneration, you might be okay. But these guys, I would say, are pretty solid behind PD. Or the thing is, you don't normally want your own stuff to die, and I feel like these aren't unleashing. These are basically good versus thugs. So, and if they have chaff in front of them, so I think you'd have to think through the situation. And if the chaff gets beaten through, you want to have like a final line. They have no armor, so you don't really want them charging in. You don't really want them getting hit by arrows. They're kind of a liability, I think, in larger fights. But potentially once you throw down protection spells, they're more viable in fights. Finally, we have the Lion Warrior. And the Lion Warrior is legit. They have this, which it gives you head and body protection. So they've got head and body protection 16, which is very good for early age. Like, they're pretty well armored. They don't have a shield, which ends up mattering a lot in combat. But that's okay. They have a 27 damage attack, which is linked to, which means you'll get a repel check on shittier like swords and stuff. And you're not going to worry about repelling against like a basic spear. But they hit for a shit ton, and then they're going to be doing armor negating typeless fatigue damage, which means it's very hard to reduce this. You do have to do damage, but if they hit something, they're going to be doing a fair amount of damage. So these guys are like your elite killers, and they're okay. You can probably use them for expansion, especially if you got like some regeneration bless. They'd be pretty good. I don't think that's the way to use them, or like to have a strategy that relies on them too much. They're just very, very killy and very good at killing elite things. So, like super combatants, these guys will just mop them up for the most part. Their kind of weakness in that department is they don't have super high attack. So I think taking an attack bless, like a very small attack bless, is probably not a bad thing. But yeah, otherwise they're good. You know, they don't have great defense, but they've got very good hit points, very good protection, decent MR, okay morale. Encumbrance is very low. Yeah, so pretty solid. And then the last unit we have is the War Elephant, and they do things elephants do. They have 10 morale, which is kind of shitty. If you put them with one of these guys, the Voice of the Lion, then they will have 12 morale, which is a very big improvement over 10, let me just say. The other thing you can do is you can mix them in with some of your higher morale troops, like this Lion Clan Warrior, or even Great Lions. The Great Lions they're faster, right? So the problem with Great Lions is you want the elephants to hit in the front and the lions to come in from behind, but it's actually going to happen vice versa. So that's unfortunate. These guys don't have good morale. It seems that your lions are probably your best morale. Okay, so probably like elephant squads you would mix in with Lion Clan warriors, and these guys would lag behind the elephants and then kind of hit what the elephants don't care, or what the elephants don't kill. They have a lot of hit points, and they have okay protection. It's natural protection. So they're not going to take a buff from Barkskin, but by the time you get like Iron Warriors or something, you could buff these guys up. So anyway, we've talked a little bit about the mages as we go, but now let's kind of really dive into the commanders. So we have a scout with forest and mountain survival. We have this guy, the Voice of the Spider, and it's a spy and it's stealthy, so it's expensive, but the upkeep's not too high. But you could do things with spies. Spies are kind of cool. You could have one place just crapping out Voice of the Spider. You can look at score graphs from enemy capitals for mundane stuff. Sacred may get you Dominion score graphs too, I'm not sure. But yeah, so you can also instill uprisings, which if you have a lot of Voices of the Spider, they recruit anywhere. So you could potentially do like shut down people's capitals by putting like 10 on them in one turn. I think it works that way. I'm not totally sure. I mean, we could test it later in this if we want to. They're sacred, so if you have some crazy bless and you have some way to make black hearts, you could potentially turn these guys into assassins. I could see that happening. And yeah, that would be kind of hilarious, actually. You would have to give them a bottle of water to use the bless, which you don't really have water access as this nation. So it'd be a little tricky. I don't know if you could really make it work, but it would be funny. We have the Rhino Clan Commander, who's very cheap, 40, gives you 60 leadership. The next best is the Lion Clan Commander, which gives you 80, and so now you can do formations, and then you get +1 to squad morale, and it's 75. The additional squad morale and the formation bonus is usually, except for very small expansion parties, going to make it worth getting the Lion Clan Commander. Though, if you're using a fort turn, you may choose to get like an indie commander instead for initial parties. The Voice of the Lion. This guy is pretty unique in this nation, whereas it's your only recruit anywhere sacred mage. And if you compare him to your next better mage, which is the Spider Clan Warrior, like this guy gets built-in poison resistance, which is nice. But he basically gets Fire 1, Death 1, and Nature 1. And these are really bad. Like, except for Nature, Fire and Death are some of the worst one-level paths to have. There's just not much useful Death 1 and Fire 1 stuff you can do. There is stuff you can do. But compared to, like, Swarm, which is kind of the Nature 1 best use case, I think, for in many situations, they're just not as good. I mean, and then you put a Thistle Mace on this guy, which is a 10 gem investment, and he's a Nature 2. And then you can do mass protection. So I would say that, like, this guy gets most of the benefits of this guy, which is your otherwise cheapest mage. But he also gets Holy, which is going to give you, like, these guys research for the same. This is 7. This is 7. But this guy's half the upkeep. 32 gold a year, while this guy is 64. So, I think there's a very strong argument to go with magic scales and use these guys as your researcher. Because they're cheap, they're almost all useful. Depending on the bless you take, they may actually be thuggable. Because you have very cheap cathartic, the lion pelt things, the things that these guys wear. You can make them very cheap for this nation. Like, I want to figure out how much you can make them for. Can Buddhas be nature? I don't think they can. These guys get a forge bonus. But if you empowered them in nature, it'd be kind of funny. They could make them probably for like 1 gem. Oh, no, but it can't be more than that, because... Yeah, okay. I think if you give... Wait, who's a nature earth? Okay, so the Spider Clan Sorcerers are nature earth. So if you give them a hammer, I'm pretty sure they can make the Cathartic Lion Pelt for 2 gems. 1 nature, 1 earth. And you put that on this guy, you have him cast Bark Skin. He's going to be up at like 22 protection, which is solid. He can then do personal regen if you put a gem on him. And then 22 protection plus personal regen. If you give him a Vine Shield and a brand, like a Water brand or a Frost brand would be like another 5 gem item. So we've spent 2 on the pelt. We've spent 1 gem on personal regen. We've spent 3 gems on a Frost brand. I'm not sure how many you would need to, how badly you really need a shield. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you take, I'm not sure what even the best bless would be for this, but like that would be, I mean, this would be a solid little light thug that would easily murder, and like you could get by with even less to murder basic PD, like up to 10. 20 PD it would be tricky, and we'll test this guy a little bit in expansion. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play, and maybe it'll be a new episode, but we'll actually play through the first year of expansion. So okay, we've talked about this guy a lot. I think he's pretty important. Voice of the Lion, Spider Clan Witch Doctor, really shitty paths, inept researcher. I don't think it's very good. It's probably one of my least favorite mages on the roster. The Hyena Clan, these guys are really interesting. So they're heretics. So that's the other thing. Our mages, not this guy. So if you go Drain, you don't want this guy either. But I think usually as researchers you'll want these. But anyway, if you can use either of these mages as your core researcher, and not have to worry about heretic issues, because while most of your mages are not sacred, these guys are heretics, which is kind of like very far away from being sacred. They hate holiness and faith, and so they're going to reduce your dominion in your province that you have these guys in. So this unit leads people away from the true faith and lowers dominion in a province. A value of 5 guarantees the removal of 1 point. Lower values means there's a chance of this happening. Values above 5 mean more than 1 point of dominion can be removed a month. So this guy's got like a 20% chance of removing dominion. He's also a disease healer, and we have a fair amount of old age dudes. Well, okay, wait, maybe it's just them. I thought there was one more. No, okay, it's just them. Some of these might get it if they roll a fire path. Like this guy might get it if he hits a fire path, no. Okay, so it might just be these guys. So it's kind of a cool thing being disease healer and old age, because they're going to get rid of all of your disease, which means you'll basically just accumulate other afflictions, which typically are not as bad as disease. So, yeah, not that bad. They're also heretics. These ones are cool, though. The fire part is kind of meh. It does open up some funny late game things where these guys potentially with like a gem for fire, a gem for earth, a gem for death, they can basically be Soul Vortex, Phoenix Pyre, Summon Earth Power, Iron Skin, like explosive landmines. And they don't need any gear. You could just put a few of them behind PD. And I think if in sufficient quantities, like with enough of these guys, like let's say you had 7 or 8, the enemy would have a hard time chasing them down, like with enough dedication that they wouldn't heal up fatigue from Earth Power and from Soul Vortex before the next set killed them. So, you know, I don't think you're going to win games with that as a strategy, but you could probably find a situation in a game where it made sense to sacrifice like 10 of these guys. Okay, but I think that's like a weird use for them. I think a normal use for them is you put 1 Earth Gem on them, you have them cast Earth Power, and then they just poop out undead. And they're just a cheap recruit anywhere, reliable death 2 that can also kind of Earth Power. Old Age Encumbrance kind of sucks, but Earth Power I think makes up for it. Yeah, Death 2, you don't get quite as many skeletons. Like Death 3 and 4, it starts getting significantly better in terms of, like, reinvigoration is going to matter more the higher death you are, to a point, because basically you're going to need more turns of sitting around fatigued out to get back up to cast 1 spell. So, yeah, anyway. I'll just leave that at that. But if you're going to use these guys as Skelly spammers, you're going to have to use kind of a lot of them. You're definitely not the best Skelly spamming nation, but you are a definite Skelly spamming nation. Like, and by the way, you have really good archers. And there's not many nations in the game that have really good Skelly spam and really good archers. So, yeah. What would I do as a script for them? I would probably do... I mean, I would say best case is you put Cathartic Lion Pelts on these, because you're going to put that on all of your mages if you can. And you have like 10 of them in front of like a huge ball of archers with some sacrificial chaff in front of them. And these guys are all going to do earth power and then shit out skeletons. You have one of your other mages put relief up, right? These are going to be at 6 fatigue recovery. Once they pass out, it's going to be 11, which means it's basically... got debug mod turned on here. Okay, yeah, it's only going to be like 3 or 4 turns between castings of Horde of Skeletons, which for a death 2 is pretty freaking good, because normally you'd have to be passed out for like 8 turns, and you get fatigued out after casting it 3 times. So getting to where you do it every 4 turns is like twice as good. So yeah, Earth Power and Relief are going to help a lot. But yeah, so these guys are... Whoops, sorry. These guys are super solid. The problem you get with these guys, and we'll talk about hereticking in general, we've already talked about it a little bit, but it significantly affects how you have to play the nation. It's like a very strong mechanic to have this many heretics. Anyway, so Hyena Clan Witch Doctor, I give it the thumbs up. The Buddha, it is Earth 2, and then it has a chance of being Earth 3, Fire 2, or being Death 3. So, if we look at it, like the other mages we had, this guy's Fire 1. The Spider Clan can potentially be Fire 3, but most of the time it's going to be like maybe Fire 2. This guy, I mean, this will be one of your reliable ways to Fire 2. One of your more reliable ways. And you're going to want to probably have a lot of Buddhas for reasons that are going to become evident in a moment. But the Earth randoms, they're the ones who are going to be doing armies of gold and stuff in the late game. In the mid game, they can do turn 1, Strength of Giants, Legions of Steel, that kind of stuff. Which is, I think, going to help with one of the main problems this nation has, which is you don't have, like, aside from your cap-only mages, you don't have super great killing power. Like, you don't have, like, most your guys are hitting for, like, 17 damage. Having these mixed in means it's going to be much harder to use thugs and super combatants against you, so it's like a super value. But regardless, being able to drop Strength of Giants is definitely going to benefit you a lot. You will kill things a lot faster with it. It's good on archers too. So that's what the Earth ones will be used for. The Death ones are going to be your best Skelly spammers. These guys have lower encumbrance because they're not old. They're not even that expensive. 215 for these guys is a deal. These are probably one of my favorite mages in the game. I mean, they are so good, guys. Like, they are an extremely strong reason to play EA Machaka. It would be fun to play. I might have to play a game with them. We'll see. But, I mean, these are so strong. The Death ones, they're going to be your Skelly spammers. You don't need an Earth Gem. You can drop Summon Earth Power. If you put... And you don't have to. Like, so first we'll do the case without. If you don't have a Skull Staff, you'll be at Death 2, or Death 3, which means Horde of Skeletons will cost you 20 fatigue plus 2 encumbrance. Or, well, spellcasting, okay, 2. So, almost nothing. Or not almost nothing, but not that much. We'll then fatigue heal normally 5 a turn because of the built-in 1 reinvigoration. And then when we fatigue out, we'll be at 10 fatigue recovery a turn. Sorry, when I did the other one, was that right? Yeah, 10 fatigue recovery a turn. And we'll be at basically will cast a spell, sleep, sleep, cast a spell, sleep, sleep, cast a spell, and then every once in a while, we'll probably get to cast with only being down for 1 turn instead of 2. So that is a pretty large amount of skeletons, and we're also getting more skeletons per cast when we're Death 3. Where this starts to get crazy is where you give them a skull staff. And if you have death gems lying around, there's few better uses than giving these guys a skull staff. They can do Iron Skin the first turn of combat, so that you don't want them dying, right? So you can do Iron Skin, summon Earth Power, and then crap out skeletons. They will be Death 4. And what that means is you're going to take the 40 fatigue for a horde of skeletons and you divide it by 3, which means it's going to be like 13. And these guys have, with Earth Power, they're going to be at 5, including the 1 built in. They'll be at 5 fatigue recovery a turn. And if you add in the 2 of spellcasting encumbrance, it's basically 15 total fatigue per cast. So we're at 5 out of 15. But then if you throw in Boots of the Messenger, which I think on the death randoms that you're investing a skull staff in, you would want to, you throw in, Boots of the Messenger, and then maybe this would be like the super luxury version. You would throw in an Amulet of Reinvigoration or whatever they're called. But the cheap version is you just throw in the Girdle of Strength or Girdle of Might or whatever it is, which is going to give you 3 more. So if you just throw in the 2 cheap items, which, are 3 gems apiece with the... or this one's even less, because you have Forge bonus on Buddhas. And the Skull Staff's cheap for you too, because it's only really... It's not 10 death gems if you have... You're a nation that can make hammers. So you use a hammer, you use a Buddha, who has a Forge bonus of 1. It's going to cost you 7 gems now, which is pretty nice. So 7 gems for that, 3 gems for Boots of the Messenger, and then the Girdle of Might, because you're also using a Buddha, is only going to cost you 2. So you're looking at 12 gems total. And this guy will be able to get out... so his total reinvigoration will be 4 from 4 from Earth Power, plus 1, so that's 5 from built-in reinvigoration, and then you have 6 more coming from miscellaneous, from these small items, which is putting you at 11. So that's a lot. And we're only using 15 per turn when you add an encumbrance. Now, does it make sense to go all the way to fatigue neutral by throwing in like that Amulet of Reinvigoration or whatever I called it? Probably not. Because you have to consider like the benefit you get from... Okay, well, as you start at 0 fatigue and you summon Earth Power, you go up a little bit, but then you're going at this like very slow rate of going up in fatigue as you cast, and like you're not even going to fatigue out quickly. Because your reinvigoration is so high that your total fatigue is only going to creep up by like 3 each time you cast. So, like very, very minimal gear. You can have somebody that makes an ungodly amount of skeletons. Like just an ungodly amount. And doing this on a nation with a Forge bonus, which comes from this one unit, like this unit, definitely one of the best units in the game. As a side benefit, if they get hit by some stray thing, they change into a were-hyena. And I can't remember, but let's actually make one real... Well, we'll make one later. I can't remember if they get... I think they get stealthy in were-hyena form, which is honestly a little stupid. It's just a little stupid. The problem with this is you're not going to really do this with the Skull Staff variety. You can put... I think you lose all your slots but your miscellaneous, so you don't want to put items anywhere except here unless you have scouts to ferry them around with, which is not a horrible idea. Pretty good MR, so you don't have to worry about Mind Hunt too much. But yeah. The Hereticing is a problem. These guys are Heretic 2. All your other guys are like Heretic 1, or all your other kind of main mages. So... yeah. It's going to be really hard to have Dominion in provinces that these guys are in. Now, what does that mean? Like, these are your best mage, but you can't have them sitting around. You really want them to be out attacking. It means you're probably going to have like one province where you put them, which is just going to have like 0 dominion, if you're trying to keep your candles in your provinces, which is an assumption. Most of the time you want your candles in your provinces, but if you don't have to do this. But if you want your candles in your province, you'll probably concentrate these guys in like 1 or 2 provinces, maybe on a border with a lab and a fort. And that's where they'll hang out. But really, what do you want? Really, you want these guys in enemy land raiding, because they're going to be causing unrest. I can't remember if they're stealthy. I think they might be, but maybe they're not. We'll check. If they're stealthy, you're not going to do the skull staff on the stealthy one, but you can do a lot. They're still really good. But yeah, you want these guys raiding, because as they raid, they are going to be like removing enemy dominion, which is going to be nice for when you have to come in behind them and you want to put yours in. So this actually is a good feature when an enemy lands, and the cause unrest is fine. Like, causing unrest in enemy lands is totally fine. Like, at some point, like, you've raided it, it's yours, but you're not necessarily planning on holding onto it for a long time, and if people take it back from you, it's like, oh shit, I got attacked by 5 Buddhas, so there's 10 unrest in addition to whatever unrest was generated by them having attacked. So a long, protracted war where you've got Buddhas raiding you is going to be very bad for your economy. So anyway, these guys are the shit. Next we have the Spider Clan Sorcerer. These come in a few varieties. I don't normally love grab bag commanders like this, where you have like 2 random 10% and shitty base paths. So what does that mean? It means we could get... Okay, we have fire, earth, death, nature. So this doesn't have earth by default. So, you know, if either you're going to get 2 or 3 in any of these. Yeah, I don't really care for this guy. They have poison resistance, which is kind of nice. But other than that, I mean, the Death 3s are kind of useful, and they're cheaper than your Buddhas, and they don't have Heretic. So if you want to keep your Dominion in your provinces, you can shit out these guys as kind of like better mages that can do things, whereas like your other non-Heretic mages, like these guys, they can't really do much. But these guys can, because you get Death 3 varieties, which have obvious uses. They're still not as good as the Death 3 Buddhas, because the Buddhas are Earth 2, and that means they can do Earth power. You'll get Nature 3 varieties, which are obviously useful, and you'll get Fire 3 varieties, which are obviously useful. And then you'll get a bunch of cross paths, like, which are less useful, probably. Yeah. I mean, the only real noticeable cross paths are like Deathfire, you can do some stuff, which, great. And then Deathfire, you can do Banefire stuff. So, I don't know how I feel about these. I probably would have to play and lose a game as Machaka to really develop an opinion about them. Having good mages who... And maybe you get some of these at the beginning when you're not worried about upkeep as much, because they do significantly more research, but they're slow to recruit, and I think are they cap only? Yeah, they're cap only. So you can't amass them. Their upkeep per RP is not terribly great, especially once you factor in like research boosters. They're not as good in combat as the Buddhas, really. They're cap only, and they're slow to recruit. Yeah, so I'm not really a fan, but I'm not saying they're bad, but I think they're overshadowed by other things. Next, we have the Lion Queen, and she is Fire 3, Nature 2, Earth 1. She has a small chance of getting a random, Sacred, which is nice. Next, we have the Lion King. And the Lion King, instead of being Fire 3, Nature 2, he is Fire 2, Nature 3. These are probably the more useful of the varieties. They're also Holy 2, which is nice to have. So, yeah. Nature 3, you can just easily do mass protection. It also opens up things like mass regen with the Thistle Mace. And so having that recruit anywhere is pretty nice. Having been in a number of games now without having reliable nature access, I definitely would be like, nice. Okay, so those are the mages and the troops. We've kind of covered them all. If you don't have Holy Threes, so to bless your troops, you need probably a mix of Voices of the Lion plus your cap-only mages. Having up to 3 and 4 different paths is pretty good, and they're all pretty good paths. Fire probably the least overwhelming, but Earth, Death, and Nature are pretty powerful to be able to get reliable 3 paths in. So that's good. And then you have the Buddha, who's the shit. The actual shit. What are the weaknesses of the nation? Let's talk about those real quick, and then I think we'll call it for the episode. The weakness is your magic diversity is okay. It's not bad, and you have high access to a lot of important things. So I don't want to say the magic diversity is bad, but it's tall but narrow, right? You have no water, you have no air, you don't even get a smattering of it. You get none. 0. You get no astral. You get no blood. So there's 4 paths that you have literally 0 in. Which means if you don't fix that in some way, you're not getting any additional income from your stuff. You're basically getting a half of the total gym income that is out there, right? So fixing, that's definitely an issue, and it would be something to think about for a rainbow. Going for a rainbow where you got 4 in all the other paths, water, air, astral, nature, would be kind of cool. I don't think that's one of the builds I'm going to show you, but we could maybe tinker with that. So that's the number 1 thing that I think is an issue. The second weakness is that a lot of your normal troops, like the Buddhas even, okay, well, they have a second form, so they're not going to be quite as affected. But a lot of your other troops, just being a human is a downside in this game. Especially as the game goes late, there's a lot of things that just murder humans, especially on the strategic map. So that's a downside. You don't have to rely on those. You can use high HP elephants and lion warriors and things like that. So you don't have to rely on them, but you kind of need to. You also have kind of crappy damage outlay, low attack density in general, which kind of sucks for dealing with player composite, player armies. So the lion warrior is super important for that role, being able to kill elites. But I would say that's kind of the main disadvantages is 1 is your magic diversity, and 2 is, but that's only really an issue for the late game. In the late game, you need to have all the paths. So it's a problem you have to fix by then. For the mid game, it doesn't matter quite as much. But yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, I think this is make the Machaka nations great again nation. Anyway, tune in for the next episode. We'll do expansion.